panel discussion for you now, and this is one on startups and the VC ecosystem in the UAE, how to grow unicorns. And to be our moderator for this session and introduce you to our amazing panelists is Faisal Hamady. He is the Managing Director and Partner at BCG. Welcome to the stage, Faisal.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see the energy in the room and great lineup of speakers. Great lineup of speakers and ideas this morning. Our topic for today is about growing unicorns. Unicorns are startups valued at $1 billion or more, which literally makes our panel for today posing the billion-dollar question. In an attempt to answer this, I'm going to invite to the panel a set of experts. I'm starting with Dr. Marwan Alzarouni, who's the CEO at Dubai Blockchain Center. Also have Roberto Croci, who's the Managing Director at Microsoft for Startups. Next up is Sheikha Al Mheiri, who's a partner at RMC. And Dr. Tarek Hajjiri is a Senior Vice President at DIFC. And Yulia Stark, who's the President at the European Women's Association. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to try to attempt to pose the questions from this angle. Hopefully, you can still see me well. I want to start by the topic of innovation in general. So innovation is moving the world economies forward. It's also equipping nations with resilience during times of crisis. So it's becoming less of a luxury and more of an imperative to be able to survive, to stay competitive, but also to stay relevant in this day and age. I want to start by a round robin, and maybe starting with you, Yulia, around the role of the government in fostering innovation in general, but also specifically about the need for unicorns within those ecosystems. If you can share your thoughts and also pass the mic through the panelists to do the same afterwards.
Well, unicorns are grown through ecosystems. We need government, we need investors, we need accelerators, we need relevant networks. And let me give you an example. As the president of European Women Association, we do work closely with the European Commission when it comes to deep tech developments. So Europe, as an example, does invest billions into testing new initiatives, investing in innovation, and then from there to go to more private market. So it is needed, but it's not only the government. We need much more private sector to be involved as well.
I agree, and I think fostering innovation within the unicorn space needs some kind of framework rather than rules and regulations. I think getting the right people in the right places and fostering that with some kind of a very general guidance is important to create these kind of ecosystems.
Yep, just adding to what Yulia and Marwan just said, I totally agree with you guys, and I think it's, when we build an ecosystem, the principle should be giving more than taking, right? So we need ecosystem players, government of course included, that think what we can put on the table to make this support network available. And if we talk specifically about unicorns, my point of view is unicorns should not be the objective, should be a consequence of having done a number of other things, which is the sources we need to get more unicorns, but shouldn't be the objective, because at the end of the day, we have now hundreds of unicorns and it's becoming about decacorns and companies that are growing, right? So that should be a consequence, and government can play a big role in policies, regulations to make this happen.
Good morning, everyone. I believe that the arguments are very powerful for me to add on to. And I think to simplify it to a much more human-centric answer is that purpose and motivation have to also be the center of it. Is that why are we motivated to create that framework, and what's the purpose, and who are the drivers? And once we answer these questions, it becomes much more easier for us to put together the tools that are going to get us to, unicorns. And right now, the word unicorn or, oh, I'm going to exit and go to the stock exchange are like bubble gum. But what does it actually take? It takes regulators, it takes players, it takes investors. It takes people who put purpose and motivation to create that ecosystem and framework.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Tarek Hajjiri. First of all, thank you very much, Your Highness, for the invitation to be with you today. I have enjoyed, to be honest, listening to our colleagues and other speakers, especially the last session, which I'm going to quote Professor when we talk about, about unicorns or about startups and the culture of innovation. I moved to Dubai for 22 years ago, and since I moved to Dubai, I experienced the culture of innovation. It's the DNA of a way of living of the government and how they pass this on to the private sector. So I share with my colleagues that unicorns is the end result of a long hard work of the government, the private sector, but most important is the culture of innovation, how we can as government to promote success or innovation through failure. So it's all around trial and error. It's all around promoting or establishing a very friendly ecosystem, which we actually are going to speak in a few minutes. So the ecosystem, the friendly atmosphere, the platform, the infrastructure where you can grow unicorns. So unicorns is something that is an end result of education, of culture, of hard work, a way of thinking. A couple of months ago, I read a book which is really very interesting, is related to how you can create your own job. It's all about innovation, the culture of how you teach your kids to think of creating their own job rather than waiting to be hired or to look for a job. So create your own. When you create your own job, you create for others. It's actually a social responsibility. And I enjoyed, of course, with Yulia the chat a few minutes ago about women and the power of women in raising a culture of innovation, because the role of women, most of the time, they spend time with our kids to raise the future generation. So if you want future unicorns, you have to focus on women, to be honest with you, on how to treat them well, how you can educate them, to invest in their education, in the culture of equalness. And frankly speaking, and this is something that may be not related, but when I joined Dubai, or I moved to Dubai, the culture of innovation is the DNA of the government. So we think of whether more regulation or less regulation. It's actually the ecosystem that you can provide for innovators, not to be afraid of failure. That reflects, of course, on the laws. So we have to have a very friendly regulation, insolvency, bankruptcy laws that really helps not penalizing on failure, because the success is always like it comes after a number of trials. So if you want a kind of economy that is innovative, or based on innovation, you have to really make sure that innovators are secured, are safe, are actually not punished from any kind of failure. They are promoted, access to finance, communication, understanding their needs. The ecosystem has to be very friendly. So the role of government, to be honest, is understanding the needs of innovators, providing proper infrastructure, whether access to facilities, to services, or and that's actually where, alhamdulillah, as I am a member of the IFC, and this is something that maybe we will speak at a later stage, we have created a very friendly ecosystem within the Dubai International Financial Center. So it's actually, it's a multiple factors that is the government on the one side, but the private sector, but securing and ensuring promotion of innovation.
Thank you very much. I love this idea of reducing the cost of innovation, right? Some countries go even one step further. We were discussing how Sweden, for example, celebrates yearly the day of failure, right? It's not about celebrating the failure itself, but the learnings you get out of the failures so that the community can learn and adapt from that one. One topic I want to touch upon is when we look into the unicorn ecosystem, there has been a very strong growth in that, right? Over the past decade, we have seen more than 10x growth in the number of unicorns, but also over the past 2 years specifically, half of that growth happened. Roberto, I want to come to you as in your line of work, you scan through quite a lot of startups on a daily basis, and you've mentioned earlier kind of the needs from the ecosystem to be able to scale. Is there a recipe in which you can look into startups and say they are meant to be a unicorn? Is it any predictors of success in the ecosystem?
Yeah, look, there is no recipe for success, but there are a few things that we can say for sure. You know, first, it starts from people, right? So the quality and the founders, the founding team. People that have a real commitment and fall in love with a specific problem that they really want to solve. If you look at the unicorns, these are, most of the times, those are founders that really are nailing down a problem, not just scratching the surface of it or the symptoms, but are really going deep into solving a real problem and finding a solution for that. Then they might find technology helpful because they can build a product that can scale, but the real focus that they have is trying to solve a real problem. And maybe they try to do first things that are not scalable and trying to solve for that. You know, the founder of Waze, if you hear about his story, he designed Waze on a piece of paper, right? So, and he tried to optimize to go from point A to point B with the reduced amount of traffic possible. But he did it on a piece of paper first, and then it took 7 years before the company scaled and became a unicorn, right? So it's about solving real problem first. And it starts from the quality of the founding team, the founders himself, who has this vision and wants to, and he really focuses the vision and the direction on that. It also starts from people that starts from the end, right? So how you become a unicorn. So we need to talk about the exits. So are you building a business that is, if you allow me to say, exitable, right? So it's something that there is an exit for it, whether it's an IPO, an M&A, or something like that, which is still a gap that we have in this part of the world that we are trying to fill. But you're talking about generally the unicorns and the number of unicorns, the increase, exponential growth that we had is because we had an increase also in exits and you know, businesses that were able to be acquired, right? So this is another
Sorry to interrupt you, but
yep.
I am a really big fan of having an exit number. If you go into a startup and you don't have an exit number, you can go forever. You can go even negative and die without knowing where your limits are. So you have to calculate that at the very early stages, I think.
Yeah. Agree, completely agree. And it's something we see. It's a gap we have in this part of the world, in this ecosystem yet, right? So not many founders start in the early stage, start thinking from that end. I mean, you might have a vision for, oh, I have the beautiful idea, beautiful product, but from a business perspective, you need to have that plan, right? And not many still have it. So, and I think it's important if we talk about becoming a unicorn, right? So, or having that ambition. And that is also, I would say, as we talk about the ecosystem, the other angle is partnerships. So chances are you are not alone out there, or you cannot do things yourself. So better you think of, in a smart way, who are the partners that you can get in your corner to support you in that journey that can help you scale or make those achievements that you want to achieve. So it's right starting from the end, and it's a contrarian way of thinking, but I think that's what the unicorns have been thinking to build that journey, that path.
Super. I want to touch back on this idea of partnerships that you mentioned, specifically to you, Yulia, because I know you've worked quite a lot on partnerships, on cross-border collaborations, and so on. An interesting dynamic we see within the unicorn landscape is the geographic concentration, right? So 80% of the unicorns are in 4 countries, 70% of which are in the US and China. How important is this cross-border collaboration, partnerships to be able to tap new markets to scale and generally to build and scale up the ventures?
I think that's probably the key. And you're right, Roberto. for example, at the European Women Association, we have partnered with 9 different countries because we've seen to grow a unicorn, you need a market, a larger market. I'm from Belgium, and in Belgium, like, it's such a tiny country. So great initiatives, often not having a market or the investment capital needed to scale, they might die, as you said, without even having a plan of exiting. So partnerships for us, it's been crucial to get women funded. We realized that we need around 5 stakeholders, like we need the government, we need the investors, we need the accelerators, we need corporates as well, and of course the entrepreneurs themselves. And then you see that when you look around still, we don't have enough female unicorns. Last night I was Googling and trying to find out what are the numbers, the most recent ones. And I've seen the first, I think, article that I've read was female-led or started unicorns quadrupled last year, thanks to COVID. Technology helped, they could scale beyond the geographical borders. That's great. So I was so proud, like finally we are getting there. Girls, like they're doing a great job. And then on the second page, a bit lower, you see, well, but it's still just 15% of the startups. So there's still some challenges, and I think we need some more awareness about the importance of partnerships, well, because when we help women get funded, we already say start now. Think about the exit and start networking with the relevant investors today, because you'll need your money in 1 or 2 years. And you need to build a relationship and trust first.
I'll add just one point to that. I think what you said is perfect, but a lot of people don't understand that the funding is there not for you to expand operations, it's not there for you to spend on marketing. When you get funding, it's to accelerate you actually. And a lot of people who even get invested in don't realize that the money is, for number one reason, is acceleration.
Yeah, and I agree, and there you need the market. So that's one of the reasons China is doing great, US is doing great. Well, look at Europe. We have like so many countries, different languages, different cultures, and especially different regulations. So scaling within Europe and growing unicorns gets challenging. So many of the European countries, eventually they test, they've got amazing, so they got some traction, and then, okay, now we're going to US. And unfortunately, a lot of capital is gone.
And I think that also for the cultural differences in terms of how certain entrepreneurs or certain founders become so hard-headed in terms of customizing the products for the regions. And that's another problem, is that yes, you can work in the UK or you can work in Europe, but not necessarily applicable in America. And the world's biggest populations are 2 countries, which is China and India. How are you relevant to them? And these are the questions. And are they the last target goal that you want to exit to? Or is it enough to be just relevant to a certain part of the world or a certain community? And these are, I think, some of the things that entrepreneurs don't sometimes look at in terms of purpose and assigning the exit value of how to be evaluated at a unicorn. And these are some of the downfalls, I think, as consultants, they would look at, is that scalability is not just a number, but also consistency and sustainability of providing that service on the long term.
Yeah, we experienced that the same. We arrived a few days ago with the European delegation here, and for the first time, many of the entrepreneurs are here, and they realize after 2 days, oh my gosh, there are a lot of cultural differences. We need to take that into consideration if we want to expand to this region. And you are right, Sheikha, this is something is not talked enough about, and I think through right partnerships in the region, it's doable. Without it, doubtable.
And actually, on your point, this is an advantage that the UAE has that founders are not fully leveraging yet. Think about what Israel has been doing with the US, finding that corridor and scaling, right? So, but Israel doesn't have the diversity of cultures that we have here in the UAE. So founders can really test and prototype and launch something here, getting a lot of feedbacks and learnings with the diversity of culture available, and then scale, right? So, and it's something that I feel, in average, a lot of founders are not realizing soon, early on, and leveraging as much as they could.
Just to allow me to confirm the point that you mentioned about Israel, we all know that it's one of the leading organizations. I personally sit as an advisory role on a VC that's called Synaptic Capital, which is an Israeli mainly funded VC. And they have all of the right tools to access the market. You know, they deploy teams here locally, they fly in, but they still cannot put their hands on the culture of relevance. Is that, okay, I know you work, you know, in the blockchain center, but how do I relate to you is the problem? Because by default, government institutions or investors, private houses have the responsibility to do the due diligence. And it doesn't happen overnight, as you mentioned. It's about building a process and a relationship for 1 to 2 years. And we're lucky enough to have a country that opened, you know, created the Abraham Accord, where, you know, we're open, we're realistic, but building trust and relationship takes time. Yeah. And it's about investing in it now rather than when you're just deciding to raise capital.
Very good. I really like the points, especially when you spoke about the markets and the cultural relevance, right? If you look into the region and we zoom in more into the region, there is a massive opportunity in terms of the population, in terms of the markets, and the similarities in terms of language, culture, and all of that, with the minor differences that are there, but there's a lot to bank upon. And I want to touch upon with this, if you allow me to speak about what role are regional authorities doing, if you give us some examples from the IFC, for example, to be able to tap into those opportunities in the fintech sector, but also others?
Well, actually, I go back also to my colleagues, what they refer to how you grow unicorns. In DIFC, we focused on preparing the ecosystem and creating the enablers. As you know, you just said, is that if you want to have, or let's say to grow unicorns, you have to have the proper soil, where like the platform, the infrastructure or the soft infrastructure, and then the enablers like access to finance, ease of doing business, ease of opening the business and exiting the business, promoting the business, exploring, testing, marketing, access to investors in one place. So we facilitate the ease of doing business in the IFC. So we focus on the process to be very friendly, the requirements to be less, to be accessible, the laws and regulations to be very, on the way, protective, but also enabling for investors. In addition to my position as the Senior VP for Legal, I also hold the position of Commissioner of Innovation, Commissioner of Intellectual Property. So in my position, I try always to focus on promoting the culture of innovation, promoting the culture of intellectual property within, to be able to grow unicorns, to work together with investors, to work together with creators, innovators, communicate with them, understand their needs, and prepare the best ecosystem for them within the DIFC. So I also teach at the American University of Dubai, entrepreneurship and intellectual property. All this, the heart of innovation is, or unicorns are intellectual property laws. So I believe that we need to communicate and educate, you know, entrepreneurs, startups about what exactly, how they can benefit from the laws, what exactly are rights, how they can explore, how they can maintain, let's say, majority or minority shareholders, how they can grow their business, and exactly as you just said, the fund, access to the fund, or having the fund to accelerate. You know, just not to rely, you know, on it to spend, but to accelerate the business, to explore other investors, to be actually approachable to other markets, not only in the UAE, but also globally. So in the IFC, we have our own ecosystem. We have our own common law system that is applicable within the DIFC jurisdiction. We have our own courts. So whoever deal within the DIFC jurisdiction is bound by the IP law or by the laws and regulations of the IFC, which is actually a common law system. We have our own courts, which we have launched also Digital Economy Court just recently. And we have created a very friendly ecosystem, like we have the Innovation Hub. And we just heard from the professor in the previous session that you have to have an access to services or very friendly ecosystem within, you know, the same, let's say, very accessible, very friendly to use. We have the FinTech Hive. We were able to assist some entrepreneurs or startups where we waived, and this is not exceptional, or like this is the system where when you establish your own business within the IFC, you will have, let's say, 2 years of exemption of, let's say, the fees of the establishing fees. This is very important. We provide you with a very reduced rate with your offices. We provide you with access to investors. We give you guidance. I don't know for who, if some of you visited the IFC, we have allocated a big area for to be able to grow unicorns, like, you know, what we call it the IFC Innovation Hub. And I extend an invitation to come to the IFC and visit it. It's amazing examples of success where they started as startups and then we move them to other area where they actually become, khalas, you know, done deal. You are no more as a startup, you are actually a big organization, a very good example of success. So we have FinTech Hive. We have like a company called, without mentioning some names not to be to promote, but if you visit us, you will have a very real examples of success. That is the result of a long-term strategy, long-term and hard work and smart work of the government to promote the ecosystem that they need. We understood what they need, and then we provided them to it.
I am sure quite a lot of the audience will take up your invitation to visit the IFC and, and get the cord. I'm aware of the time, so I just want to end with one concluding question to Dr. Marwan. You mentioned earlier the digital economy initiative, and if we look into the future of the digital economy, it looks very different than the Web 1.0 and Web 2.0, which is more social and mobile. And now we're going into a cognitive AI logic, we're going into decentralization around different aspects, we're going into around different interfaces. What would be the kind of the success factors or enablers for startups and specifically unicorns in that new, let me call it meta economy?
I think there are a lot of things that where the digital economy, especially cryptocurrencies and the technology that they enable brings to the factors that enable or provide value for creating unicorns. One of them is, of course, access to finance. Before, if you wanted to raise funds for a local company, you are limited by the financial VCs or studios or you know, taking a loan from the bank or getting an angel investor. But now with the cryptocurrency ecosystem, you have crowdfunding that's much easier to capitalize on than any other finance means or liquidity you know, providers. The other thing is speed, and I mentioned this again, when you get funding, actually the main thing that the funders are looking for is to speed up your growth. And with cryptocurrencies and the access to liquidity that they bring, they actually speed up the process of creating what is similar to IPOs within the crypto ecosystem, like ICOs, IDOs, IEOs, which are like initial decentralized exchange offering or initial exchange offering, even crowdfunding, all of that without any paperwork, without any governance overhead that the traditional systems provide. In addition to that, they provide even organizational structures that are fully digital. And one of those innovations is called decentralized autonomous organizations. And a lot of the unicorns within the crypto ecosystem are actually formed in this matter, or in this manner, which is the decentralized autonomous organizations. DeFi was actually created based on decentralized autonomous organization. And DeFi by itself is a huge provider of liquidity. So DeFi is decentralized finance, and it is provided by cryptocurrency technology. So all of these innovations are force multipliers for creating digital unicorns that were not there even 3-4 years ago. So you've seen that how this innovation is jumping actually and changing how we think about startup finance.
Super. Thank you very much. I'm very exciting conversation, and I'm aware of the time, so I'd invite our audience to still find you, dear panelists, in the coffee room for extended chats on those topics of interest. But for now, thank you very much for your fruitful insights, and thank you everyone for the great discussion.